and welcome to the latest episode of Off the Fence. This is your go-to weekly jumps program on all the digital platforms, but you know that by now because we've been with you all season and we've been coming your way courtesy of our partnership with BoyleSports, and this is our season finale. Can't believe it. We've rattled all the way through the jump season. I've been joined by Geraghty and Tony Keenan week in, week out, and I've loved every minute of it. And before we go any further, just introduce the fourth member of today's team. This is Vanessa Ryle. I don't know if you can see him, but I hope you can. Rufus was picked up today, and so on the basis that we are recording this on Friday night before the Punchestown Festival, I just didn't want to be interrupted by a puppy screeching, so he will stay on my lap for the duration of this show. If you were wondering, that's what that is. Let's plough straight on now. All the introductions are out the way, and check in with the boys. Barry Geraghty, how are you? This is our last show of the season. You'll miss us, won't you?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's been a good year. Yeah, been enjoyed. Yeah, definitely. It's been good, and it's hard to believe we're at the end of it already. But looking forward to Punchestown all the same.
Yeah, absolutely. We are going to be looking at all the big races from Punchestown, and yeah, Friday night recording means that, you know, we're not sure what's going to run where, but bear with us with that. We've still got some good pointers coming your way, and a lot of them will be coming from that man, Tony Keenan. How are you, Tony?
I'm good, Vanessa. Yeah, definitely feels like spring's in the air. Well, this week at least, it's been a lovely week over here after a very wet period there. And yeah, I know we're usually used to recording this in the pitch darks of winter, Novembers and Decembers, but definitely I was pulling down blinds and trying to get the light right there this evening. You'd have a bit of a spring in your step seeing that nice weather. Now, what way Punchestown will handle the ground next week remains to be seen, because there is some rain forecast. I think over the weekend there was mention of watering from the Galopin course there. I think yesterday when they did a bit of a video on Twitter. So we'll just have to see how the ground plays out next week.
Quickly, Tony, will you go to Punchestown at all? Is it a festival you go to?
I might go to Saturday, but there's a small matter of Monaghan are playing Derry in the Ulster Championship semi-final next Saturday, and we kind of a bit of revenge on our minds there after last year. So I think I'm going to go to that instead. So yeah, we had a great result there last weekend. So we have the chest out at the moment. I don't know how long that's going to last, so I'm going to keep it out. I think the Saturday Punchestown.
Right, you and the viewers will know that has gone straight over my head, but I'm sure there are lots of viewers out there who appreciate that comment. So let's move on back to the racing, Tony. We will kick straight off with the Tuesday, and as we say, obviously we're going to be talking about horses, and they might not show up in certain races, but we're going to try and point you in the direction of some winners. And we are going to kick off with the Champion Novice Hurdle, which is over the 2 miles on the Tuesday, the Grade 1, one of the big races on the first day of the Punchestown Festival. And we don't get to see Marine Nationale, the Cheltenham Festival winner here. Unfortunately, he's gone out for his summer holidays now. So as a result, Facile Vega is up at the top of the market. But of course, we may see him stepping up in trip, Barry. And in which case, Impaire Et Passe may well go off the favourite for this. How are you expecting this to plan out? Where do you think Facile Vega will go?
Well, it's never easy to predict what Willie Mullins is going to do, because I think it's usually lastminute.com that these decisions are made. But I'd have to wonder whether Facile Vega, he was very keen, obviously, at the Dublin Racing Festival. He was dropped in at Cheltenham. Willie questioned the ride Paul gave him in the Supreme and felt he could have done better on him. So I wonder, would stepping up and trip be the ideal thing for him when he is a little bit keen, and also when he felt so strongly about the horse maybe underperformed, if you like. Maybe he has enough faith in him at 2 miles. So I just wonder whether he will go up and trip. If Impaire Et Passe runs in 2.5, well, you know, he's going to settle, and you know he's going to stay. It's straightforward for him. I wouldn't doubt Facile Vega staying, but he does need to relax. So it's a little bit up in the air, but he obviously has 2 very strong cards to play regardless of what he runs.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tony, would you concur those thoughts of Barry in regards to Facile Vega?
I would, and I think they're probably going to get some of the slowest ground of the week on Tuesday if it does rain over the weekend. So that'd be the logical thing to do. I do think Dave Verge, though, has a chance of getting some of the ground on. It's not an awful lot of the ground back from the Supreme. I think he was 2 1/4 lengths behind him. Facile Vega bounced back right back to form in the Supreme, and very good training performance to get him back to form. But it also put a little bit of a lid on his ability. He's a very good horse, but perhaps not the superstar that he might have looked in his bumper days and so on. They've urged an interesting horse. He's kind of improved a lot run to run this season. If usually a Willie Mullins horse like him, I think he was coming off a 484-day break when he made his debut for him at Christmas. But they had a much more fancied runner in the race with Parmenion, and I just wonder whether they're bringing him along a bit more gradually. He was excellent at Punchestown after that, and I thought when he was third in the Supreme, he got a little bit more to do there. Still travelling well 2 out, and he finished the race out very strongly. And yeah, I just think there's a bit more upside with him. Not all that long with the yard. I was just looking at the prices there. I think it looks like Fassa Vega odds on. The Verge is kind of 4-1, 3-1 type of ballpark at the moment. And if you'd have a price, I would give him a chance of at least getting closer to him at a track he's already shown that he's very effective at.
Okay, let's move on to the Champion Chase. And obviously, look, we know this is going to be a Mullins bonanza, but this race we won't spend too long on if it is just going to be an Energumene cakewalk, essentially. He's 4-11 at the top of the anti-post market. Gentleman to me in there at 5-1 if he shows up. Captain Guinness to pick up the pieces again at 13-2. Blue Lord 9-1. Magic Days in there at 25s. But we're looking at pointing everyone in the direction of a winning bet here. And is Energumene just the one here, Tony?
Yeah, he obviously would prefer a little bit slower ground, and has had it at Cheltenham in the Championships last 2 seasons. But equally, he is co-fine with kind of Punchestown decent ground at this meeting the last 2 years, and there's no reason why he won't do so again.
Barry, anything to add in terms of what might chase him home? We know you're a big Energumene fan, so is that just it for you in this race?
Well, I would say so, but Gentleman to me, having not been at Cheltenham, does really well in the spring. I think he would be the one, but Captain Guinness, you'd have to admire his run at the festival to be second in the Champion Chase, so he would be a contender too. But no, Energumene, especially what he did last year in the Champion Chase at Punchestown versus, for me, he was more workmanlike than I would have expected at Cheltenham last season. So he built on that run last year, so he should have no issue.
Okay, Tony, let's move on to the Champion Novice Chase, all on the Tuesday as well. Good racing on the Tuesday, but this has got a pretty small field just at this entry stage even. Only the 7 in there currently, and Appreciated is in there along with Classic Getaway. Who was it? Haven't seen him since, was it Goran in November, I think? Seems a long time ago that. Journey with Me, James de Burle, Sir Gerhard in there, and Ramillies as well. I mean, again, tricky to know what's going to line up, but it looks as though it's going to be a very small field anyway.
Yeah, I think most of them might pitch up here. At least you make it 5 or 6 runners out of the 7 that are there at the moment. So Henry de Bromhead's the happiest man around looking at this race. He's kind of held off Journey with Me. He said he wasn't going to Cheltenham, went to Naas instead, and there was talk of going Daintree Ferry House was an option, but he's held off, and he's pitched up here, and he's going to come up against a few horses that have gone to Cheltenham, gone to Ferry House, and are coming back here, whereas his horse is relatively fresh. So I'm sure he's happy with that. I'm just a little bit iffy with him at the trip. Appreciated would have looked like a horse that would stay, throughout his career, but I just don't like the way he's raced in the last twice. He's starting to hang, which is a kind of a new feature of him. Now, I was inclined to forgive it at Cheltenham when the pace was really quickening in that Turner's Chase. You'd say, oh, he just caught his head a bit, but he's doing the same at Ferry House, going left markedly in the straight. He looked at quite a hard race there. So I'm just not sure about him going right-handed again. So Gerhard has really been disappointing at Punchestown each of the last 2 seasons. And is he a really 3-miler? So you're down to kind of process of elimination here. Classic Getaway, look, you're throwing the cards up there in the air and guessing with him. I think the market is going to tell you what you need to know about him. And it's perfectly valuable that he will come back to form. Like Willie Mullins has brought horses back of long breaks. Classical Dream, an example in Steers Hurdle 1 year, and a strong kind of market support to win that. And this, this is probably a Grade 1 novice chase with a little bit of an asterisk in it. No, the real whacker, no Jerry Colomb, but I'd be guessing with him. The one I was kind of coming down on tentatively was Emmett Mullins' horse Farinelli. I know, kind of a mad horse, obviously running this, having started off in a bumper at Christmas, but he's probably run to 140 or so there in the Cork race behind Bacchusson. Seemed to jump pretty well for a first time over fences. And, maybe this race isn't going to take much more than 150 to win it, and there's certainly frailties in some of the others. And he's kind of coming into it off a career best. For some of them, maybe having been a little bit disappointing last time or coming off a break.
interesting angle in. Barry, over to you to match that, please. Or are you going with one of the more sort of obvious types at this level, one of the more headline acts?
Yeah, well, journey with me, obviously having missed the festivals and goes here fresh, you definitely have to take note of. But I think he'd have to put up a better show than what he has done to date. And Classical Getaway, I just have a concern about him. Does he want it really soft? He is a smart horse. He's yet to really prove it at this level, but I think to do that, he'd want it proper soft. I thought Sir Gerhard made a big step back in the right direction. I really fancied him at the festival in Cheltenham, but he never turned up at all. He was a good second behind Flame Bearer over 2.5 in Ferias last time. Now he's going back to try and do the 3 festivals, obviously, which is a difficult thing to do. But you could say he didn't have a tough time at Cheltenham when he underperformed as much as he did. It was also 2.5 mile down at Ferias, which won't take as much out of him had he ran in 3 mile races, if you like. Plus his nature as well. Now on the negative, he has disappointed at the last 2 Punchestown, so that would be a big negative. But it was a real step back in the right direction. I thought 2.5 was sharp enough for him. Ran a really good race, kept going well. If he can get over the turnaround between Ferias and Punchestown, for me, he'd be the one to be on.
Okay, let's move on to Wednesday. That's Tuesday, done and dusted. Obviously, just the big races we're getting stuck into on this show. 3 mile novice hurdle to kick things off on the Wednesday for us anyway. And we've got Embassy Gardens in here, 3-card Braga horse we've likes. Gaelic Warrior as well is thrown there. We don't have any betting at the moment, Barry, but Gaelic Warrior, we know how much you were banging on about him prior to the Cheltenham Festival. Who did you land on here when you're looking at this early stage for this race?
Well, he's definitely of interest, but he did run keen at the festival. That was with Patrick Mullins on board. If Paul Townend rides him, he'll have a job to settle him, obviously, and that's going to be harder going up and trip. But he's definitely a very smart performer. Handicapper rates him the highest. He's made under 52. Whereas Sander Clegane, who would be the other horse I'd like here, dropped in well off the pace in the Albert Bartlett, chartered a wide enough course, if you like, through the race, finished really well, was a good third, only beaten about 2 lengths. He's rated about 142. So on the handicap rating, Gaelic Warrior is a good bit ahead of him. And that might make him hard to beat. But I think Sander Clegane is a horse who can build on that. Affredale Fury, who was second in the Albert Bartlett, ran really well. But I think he got an easier time. He kept towards the inner. He was ridden to run well. He stayed really well. I just think Sander Clegane would have the edge of pace on him. But it probably hinges on Gaelic Warrior if he lines up here, which he probably could, as we discussed with Willie on his novices. If he splits them that way, this will be the obvious one for him to go, but he has to settle if he's going to win over this trip. But I definitely do like Sander Clegane. I think there's more to come from him.
Okay, confident nod from Barry then. Over to you, Tony. Do you have concerns about Gaelic Warrior at this trip if they run him here?
Yes, little worry. Going back right-handed will be a big help to him, though. And Mullins' team haven't really had a 3 mile novice hurdler of note this season, so they may be inclined to up one of those 2.5 milers and trip, and he might be the most obvious. Look, the stats in this meeting are very stark in terms of Mullins and winning all the grade ones. A really good tweet here from Matt Toombs there. Just looking at the last 10 years, Punchestown grade ones, Willie Mullins won 72 of them, which is amazing. And the next 2 in, Gordon Elliott with 9 and Henry de Bromhead with 6. So just multiples and multiples there. But I'm hoping that maybe this is one where Gordon Elliott may be able to get a winner back. And I quite like the claims of Salvador Ziggy here. He was second in the Pertemps, coming off quite a break there. His previous run to that was when placed behind Shoot First in the meeting back in November. But I thought he shaped well in the Pertemps. He kind of got hampered going down the hill and shuffled back, and then met some trouble in the straight, running up the back end of horses, but finishing off well. Now, good time Johnny was an impressive winner there, but I thought this horse, his kind of handicap experience will be a help to him. He's improved a lot since going up to 3 miles. And again, I don't think there's an absolute standout like last year, maybe something like the Nice Guy. I think he might be able to get in amongst them despite not really having that graded form, I suppose, through the winter. But the nice ground will certainly suit him.
Okay, two different types then in that particular race, that particular novice hurdle race. Barry, let's move on to the Gold Cup, which takes place on the Wednesday, Punchestown Gold Cup. Only the 6 entered, and of course headed by the big lad Galopin Des Champs, looking to follow up his Cheltenham Festival win with another Gold Cup here and finish his season on the highest of highs. He is 2-7 to get the job done, ahead of Bravemansgame at 4-1. A lot of speculation about whether he will be able to run. Envoy Allen in there, stepping up in trip from his Ryanair win at 6-1. Hewick off the back of the Cheltenham Festival fall at 14s. Fury Road in there at 16s, and Fast or Slow, the big outsider, at 33s. It's going to be a small field, we know that, and surely this is just a sort of a cakewalk for Galopin Des Champs, and he can just wave at the crowd, just, you know, enjoy his lap of honour.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Yeah, but it should be that way for Paul Townend and Galopin Des Champs, you'd imagine. If Bravemansgame does turn up, I think the track may suit him a little bit better than Cheltenham. It would be able to dictate a nice pace towards the 4, if you like. But there's no reason to suggest why that won't suit Galopin Des Champs, who's not short of pace. He won the John Durkan over 2.5. He competed over 2.5 last season. So, albeit it might suit Bravemansgame, if he does turn up here, as I said, there's no reason to say it won't suit Galopin Des Champs. So no, he will be very hard to beat, and even to pick what would be second. Envoy Allen, you could pick holes in the strength of the Ryanair form. Hitman let it down. French Dynamite likewise. So I'm not so sure. If Bravemansgame doesn't turn up, it'll be a weak affair, I think.
Okay, well, fingers crossed he does for the race itself, but I think it's going to be highly unlikely. Let's move on to the bumper, Tony. Obviously, we really have very little idea of what's actually going to run here, but A Dream to Share, looking to follow up on from his Cheltenham Festival champion bumper win, is the headline act at the entry stage. Will he be very hard to beat? Well, not a quick turnaround, but he's been quite a relatively busy horse in the last couple of months.
Yeah, but he had a good break over, the guts of the winter there, and came back to the Dublin Racing Festival. I would have actually thought going into Cheltenham that this race would probably suit him better than the champion bumper at Cheltenham, at more of a speed track, and the ground may well be a little bit better than it was in the Wednesday at Cheltenham. So I'd say he's a very worthy favourite. There are interesting horses in here against him. Ballybourne was good over the course, although I think it was the inner track that he was on that day. No Time to Wait, I thought shifted better than the form in the champion bumper, and Tullyhill. But all three of those would look more like staying types, and I think they really need a certain type of race at this trip, something maybe to go off very hard in front and to maybe I do think there's really shares very much the one to beat again.
Okay, and Tony, is there anything else on Wednesday that you want to flag up before we leave the second day of the Punchestown Festival, please?
Yeah, I suppose that we've mentioned Willie Mullins is going to have the favourite in basically all of these Grade 1 races, but there is an interesting race there, probably maybe one for participation prize as much as anything else, but it is quite a lot of prize money as well. It's the Connolly's Red Mills. They run a series of auction hurdle races through the season, maiden hurdles and the odd kind of just novice hurdle, and they've got 19 entries for that. There's 44 grand to the winner. There's some quite classy horses in this, actually. Sander Clegane and 3 Bragg are both entered in this. They obviously were bought at relatively cheap prices. I think they met back in Galway. If connections maybe want to go for the soft race, that would be an option there. One that has kind of improved lately, quite good at Navan the last time, beating Landrake. What's called Senior Chief, it's from behind the Bromhead. He'd have a chance if the big names didn't turn up. And another one there, Sam Collindale at Castlelunga. I think she's been shaping well, and certainly luckily the trip at Limerick was too sharp the last day over 2 miles, and we'll be getting in here with the way the conditions are off quite a low weight. But yeah, that's quite an interesting race. A lot of horses for maybe the smaller yards haven't been aimed at it, and it should be very competitive one to watch on Wednesday.
Interesting competitive event. That's what we want at these big festivals. Let's roll on to Thursday, Barry Geraghty, and we will kick off with the Grade 1 Stayers hurdle to look at here. And I mean, Sire de Burle is looking for this incredible and very unpredicted treble. Obviously, one at Cheltenham, one at Aintree, and now he's in here, and he is currently a 5-1 shot with BoyleSports to do the treble. Ahead of him in the market is Tiupu at 9-4, Classical Dream at 4-1. The Enigma, well, not the Enigma, but the unknown that is Monkfish is in there. Asteria Falange's bigger price at 9-1. Queensbrook at 10s. this division has been so interesting all season long. And I'd love to see Sire de Burle do the treble, but surely he can't. Surely that is just ridiculous talk.
Well, maybe he can, maybe he can't. I'd say the thing he hinges on mostly is a strong pace. If they go as fast as they went in Punchestown, that'll play to his strengths. It was a proper same performance at Aintree, so I think he's going to need an end-to-end gallop. As an 11-year-old, there's probably every chance he could bounce back and recover quickly enough from Aintree to Punchestown to be competitive. But I just wonder, will he get as strong a pace as he'll need? Of the others, obviously Tia Hoopu ran really well at Cheltenham. I don't think he's as ground dependent as people think, but he's more trip dependent. So I think he would be the one to beat. Monkfish is definitely of interest. And Classical Dream likewise, who was going for the hat trick, having won the last 2 runnings of it. But there's a bit of forgiveness needed for him on his Cheltenham run. But I thought Queensbrook was of interest. The mares hurdle at Cheltenham, Love Envy dictated lovely pace. Honeysuckle sat on her heels. They quickened from the front. I don't think that's suited Queensbrook. I think she wants a proper test. I think she's going to thrive stepping up on trip. Whether they wait for the mare's race, I'm not so sure. Having been beaten over 2.5 mile at Cheltenham, whether they want to try that again. So I think this will be the race for Queensbrook. She's probably a little bit of value each way, maybe, but I think Tia Hooper will be the one to beat.
Okay, value each way there for Queensbrook at 10-1. Like that angle in. Shamara, I've got a real soft spot for Tony. Over to you for this. I ask you this time and time again, unpick the stairs hurdling division, and every time we struggle, basically.
Yeah, you think Sarah de Burle, along with wanting a strong pace, might want them. I know Punchestown are doing some work on the track at the minute to kind of take bends out of it and things like that for flat racing there, but they might want to add another 2 furlongs to the straight. With the amount of time it takes him to get going, it'll be some achievement if he can win one of these round Punchestown. But yeah, this race can be one that throws up a shock over the years. I can definitely see Barry's case with Queensbrook. I thought Classical Dream didn't run quite as bad maybe as the bare finishing position suggested. Cheltenham, he travelled well for away. Willie Mullins kind of mentioned before, and was touch and go to get him to the race. Maybe this race in the back of the mind all along. The problem is that you're not getting an awful lot of sweets in the price, really. I think kind of 4 or 5 to 1 shot. Thought maybe they might be a little bit more generous, coming off what appears a bad number. I suppose he has won the last 2 runnings of it. But yeah, I'd lean towards, I think, Queensbrook having an outside chance here if she does run, because at 3 miles looks like it could be her thing, and she's built up quite a good record at the track. Okay,
couple of positive nods then towards Queensbrook. I don't think we should really spend too much time covering the 2 mile novice chase, the grade 1, because it looks like it could be all about, well, it will be all about El Fabiolo if he gets there on the day. We don't know what's going to take him on. We don't have any betting, and the likes of Dysart Dynamo are in there, Saint Noir as well, not long till May, but it could just be a freebie for El Fabiolo. So let's move on, Tony. Because there's probably some more interesting races to get stuck into on the Thursday. What do you want to flag up? A couple of handicap horses?
Yeah, there's 1 or 2 horses that I thought were quite interesting. The handicap, there's a pigsback.com handicap, just over 2 miles, the second race on the Thursday. Henry de Brom had won this last year. Magic is coming back of a break. Novice going into handicap company last year. I think there might be another one with a not dissimilar profile to him. The horse last season called Tiara with the same trainer last season. But Folks Tiara, I thought, ran a really good race at Leopardstown at Christmas. Ran into one in final orders and went on to follow up the next time at the Dublin Racing Festival of a good bit higher mark and ran quite well in the Grand Annual. Folks Tiara hasn't run since, but if it's in the same form, I'd definitely give it a chance in a race like this. One of the few kind of unexposed horses, and there are some more exposed types in it that might be vulnerable to improver. And then there's a very competitive 3 mile handicap hurdle here. I'm given hoping here that Martin Brasley might have a change of luck from some of his kind of reverses in the spring festivals. Now a reverse Top Desert Moor House is a horse that's brought along with these kind of targets in mind. He ran 4th in the big Staying Novice handicap at Fairyhouse over Easter. Really, really wide trip the whole way. And if the horse can get in and get a little bit of cover, I think the way it ran the last day, the way it went through, it was still involved there. come between the last two would suggest that its mark is manageable, at least if we can get a kind of trip through the race, albeit that this is inevitably going to be a big field of 20 horses, but a bit more luck and run, I think, can be competitive.
Okay, a couple of handicap horses to keep an eye on then. Before we go any further with our Punchestown preview, let's head over to see Robbie Power, who is of course a BoyleSports ambassador, and he has given us his thoughts on what might happen at the Punchestown Festival this year.
Hello to all viewers on Off the Fence, it's Robbie Power, BoyleSports ambassador, as we look ahead to next week's Punchestown Festival as the curtain comes down on what has been another fantastic season for Irish National Hunt racing, and some of the stars that I'm looking forward to seeing. El Fabiolo, a brilliant winner of the Arkle Chase at the Cheltenham Festival. Impaire Et Passe, a brilliant winner of the Ballymore Novices Hurdle in Cheltenham. Stateman, runner-up to Constitution Hill, he'll run in Friday's Punchestown Champion Hurdle. But the race that I'm most looking forward to for the entire week comes on Wednesday in the Punchestown Gold Cup, where the brilliant Cheltenham Gold Cup winner Galopin Des Champs will take on Bravemansgame, runner-up to him in Cheltenham, and throw in Envoy Allen, a brilliant winner of the Ryanair Chase at the Cheltenham Festival and a Grade 1 winner this season over 3 mile. It promises to be, for me, the race of the week. And can Galopin Des Champs emulate Sizen John and become only the second horse in history to win the Irish Gold Cup, the Cheltenham Gold Cup and the Punchestown Gold Cup? It's going to be another fantastic week's racing.
On we go to the big races on Friday, and we get to see Stateman in the Champion Hurdle, Punchestown Champion Hurdle. He is currently 1-2 with BoyleSports to win this race off the back of finishing second to that horse, of course, Constitution Hill at the Cheltenham Festival in the Champion Hurdle there. Barry, is he possibly worth taking on here, or am I just barking up the wrong tree with that? We've got Vauban in there, Piper, Sharjah, if he turned out again, Echoes and Rain, Zanahir, Epiton, all the same usual names. Is Stateman just a good thing here, or might this be a time to take him on?
No, he should be very hard to beat, and he probably didn't have the toughest time at Cheltenham, having been dropped in and ridden from off the pace rather than make the running and try and slog it out to beat Constitution Hill. So he probably didn't have the toughest race in the world at Cheltenham. But no, I think he's going to be very hard to beat. Of the opposition, I thought maybe the most potential was in Pied Piper. Stepped up a good bit on his 2 previous runs at Leopardstown to go down by the shortest margins in the county hurdle. And that was a big step back in the right direction for him. And at his age, there is potential for more improvement for him. So I would see him be the one maybe to chase home the favourite Stateman. But no, Stateman should be very hard to beat.
Okay, Pied Piper is currently 13-2 with BoyleSports in the market, but behind that very short price of Stateman. How do you see this race playing out, Tony, anyway, to get Stateman beaten?
No, that's what Barry said there. I thought the horse was ridden a little bit with an eye to Punchestown, Town, and I think had in the back of his head he wasn't going to beat Constitution Hill. The one that might be able to chase him home, possibly Echoes and Rain. Just kind of ran okay in the mare's hurdle, was out the back and probably a little chance with the way the pace of the race went, but moved kind of all right into it. But always possible, always that she's better over 2 miles and did run very well in this race last year when second only suffered, so could possibly do likewise again.
Okay, she's currently 10-1 in the market with BoyleSports behind Stateman. Tony, let's stick with you for the 2 mile, 3 furlong novice hurdle. The Grade 1, of course, again, loads of entries, and we've already spoken about the option of Facile Vega going here instead of the 2 mile option. Who do you fancy at this early stage, basically?
Yeah, boringly and predictably, it's Fav again, I think here. Impaire Et Passe should be quite hard to beat. I suppose there's a possibility that something like Geraghty Tom would step up and trip. He looked to find things maybe happening a little bit fast in the Supreme, having gone from that into a kind of possibly an overly strong race at the Dublin Racing Festival. But it's hard to look past the Ballymore winner.
Okay. Barry, do you have anything more to add other than favourite?
No, definitely not. No, and Champ Kiley ran well at Cheltenham, so he could be one to chase him home as well. But no, I think the favourite would be very hard to beat.
Okay, favourite hard to beat. Barry, what about there's an interesting novice handicap chase on the Friday and a horse that you wanted to flag up?
Yeah, a couple there. It just depends on the ground, I suppose, for So Scottish. Beating 10 lengths at the festival on soft ground. All his form, good form had been on better ground. So if it did dry, he'd have to be of interest in So Scottish. And another horse there, Grandero Bello, who was behind the Devil's Coachman in Limerick last time. He made the run over 3 mile. I think he'd be better suited dropping back in trip, maybe a bit more pace and ridden just behind the pace a little bit. So I think he's a horse who has potential, Grandero Bello. He wouldn't mind if the ground was soft, but I think if the ground was better, so Scottish would definitely be of interest.
Okay, so Scottish getting a nod there then. Let's move on to the Saturday. An interesting mares hurdle here. This is a competitive little event to round off proceedings on the final day of the festival. Echoes and Rain we've already spoken about. She might go elsewhere. Brandy Love in here. Epatante, Love Envoi, Mary's Rock, Princess Zoe and Queen's Brook, again another mare that we've spoken about potentially running in the Stayers hurdle. Barry, but this could have a bit more depth to it than a few of the other grade ones throughout the week.
Yeah, there's plenty there with chances, but the one I would really like is Love Envoi. She got beaten by Brandy Love in Ferias as a novice, one of only 2 defeats she's had. So she is a very good mare, and the other defeat obviously to the hands of Honeysuckle at Cheltenham. Dictated a lovely pace at the festival and was just beaten by Honeysuckle. I thought she ran a brilliant race. She would be the one for me. But Brandy Love went to Cheltenham on a quick enough turnaround on her run and Punchestown behind Queen's Brook, and whether that just came too soon for her. Obviously, I mentioned that she did beat Love Envoi as a novice before in Fairyhouse, so she is of that standard. She's a very good mare. You know, she's has some great form in the book as well. But on recent runs, Love Envoi would be the one to beat. But Brandy Love, I wouldn't be surprised to see her put up a better show this time.
Okay, what about you, Tony? Who do you fancy in here of these mares? Open and, like I say, a bit more depth.
Yeah, it's not so much who I fancy as who I don't fancy. The only opinion I had here was that Love Envoi would. I know there are no prices out yet, but I just I'm certainly going to be favoured, and she might be a favourite to oppose for a couple of reasons. Just at Cheltenham, the pace in the mare's hurdle was so steady that her track position looked to be a big advantage. And kind of when part of the Honeysuckle story and all that kind of went with it, I just wonder, will she be a bit overplayed in the market coming back to Punchestown? And then there's also a concern that she ran well at Fairyhouse last season when she came over after Cheltenham, but to me it was below her down run form. So how does she handle travelling kind of on her final run of the year? The break now will be longer from Cheltenham to Punchestown than it was last year from Cheltenham to Fairyhouse. But there would be just 2 concerns, considering you're probably going to have to take quite a short price about her.
Okay, couple of little red flags then, just poking out there. Barry, very quickly, we also have the 4-year-old hurdle, the juveniles. Lossiemouth is expected to show up here. Is there anything worth trying to take her on with, or flagging up to chase her home, or is this? I mean, she's going to go off incredibly short price, isn't she?
Yeah, she will, I'm sure, and she will be hard to beat. But I thought Enjoy the Dream put up a good performance to beat Blood Destiny at Fairyhouse. Had improved a lot in its previous run. Obviously wasn't at the Cheltenham Festival, went to Fairyhouse fresh, well placed by Andy Mack. It was a good step up, but a good profile, some strong platform in Germany from before. As I say, big step up in its previous run. So there's potential in Enjoy the Dream, but whether that's enough to beat Lossiemouth, I'm not so sure.
You just can't let go of that love for Blood Destiny, can you, Barry? You just always link. Final word to you, Barry. Just a mention for the 2 mile 3 furlong handicap that happens on Saturday as well.
Yeah, competitive handicap as always. There's a few there with Cheltenham form. An Epic Song is there. Falvier Seedon. But the one I thought was of interest, stepping up and trip, had a run a few weeks back on the flat in Leopardstown, was Brazil. I think he's a horse who might enjoy stepping up to 2.5. Obviously got some good form from last season's Boodle's win and lots of other good runs during the year. But I think Brazil could be of interest stepping up and trip. But It looks a very competitive race.
We'll watch with interest for Brazil then. That is a rattle through Punchestown. Obviously, so early on, it is hard to hammer down what we don't even know what's going to run where, but hopefully we have pointed in the direction of a few noteworthy horses and a few winners along the way as well. Enjoy the big festival to wrap up the jump season. And as always, boys, Barry and Tony, thank you so much for your contributions, not only today, but of course, throughout the whole of the last few months, because this is our final show of Series 3 of Off the Fence. Viewers and listeners out there, BoyleSports as well, thank you so much for your support. We have enjoyed it. We hope you have. But for now, it is goodbye. That was Off the Fence.